Welcome to the Penguin Random House Book and Author Festival, brought to you by Library Journal and School Library Journal. We have back-to-back panels scheduled for you today, but don't worry, everything will be recorded and available in the sessions area by the end of the day. And the entire event, booths and all, will be on demand for 3 months. Please check out the navigation tips if this is your first virtual event with us. You can refer to the Help tab if you run into trouble. And finally, a big thanks to all of our sponsors and partners for helping to make today happen. Make sure to visit them in the exhibit hall to chat with reps and see what books and resources you can find. I am Jane Jorgenson, and in a moment I'll be joined by Holly Jackson. Holly has written a number of young adult novels and is best known for her A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. But today we'll be talking about her latest, a mystery thriller written for adults. Not Quite Dead Yet from Bantam has a protagonist investigating her own murder. I can't wait to hear more about it, and I'm excited to welcome Holly Jackson. Hi
Hello.
there.
Hi,
Welcome.
Jane. Thank you.
So we'll jump right into our questions so that we have enough time for everything. So Not Quite Dead Yet is your debut novel, adult novel. I put debut in quotes because, of course, you've already written novels for young adults. With the knowledge that the premise of the question is wordplay, I will ask if writing for an adult audience changed anything about how you thought about the process, creation of this novel. What was different?
Well, firstly, it's fun to be a debut again. Let me have it. I'll probably never have a chance to be a debut again because I certainly can't write for any other audience type. They're not going to let me near middle grade. No, I'm not allowed there. So this is probably my only chance to be a pretend debut again. So I'm enjoying every moment. And in terms of, is it different to writing my young adult books? No, it's exactly the same process. I like to joke that the only difference is this time I got to use a few more swear words and the best swear word that there possibly is. But other than that, in terms of the plotting, the research, the process, how I go about telling the story, it's the same process that I've nailed down with my young adult books. And really, the only difference is that the main character is 27 rather than 18, but let's be honest, there's not a huge difference between 27-year-olds and 18-year-olds a lot of the time. Um, I think especially nowadays, there's a lot of people in their mid to late 20s who still feel a bit like teenagers or like they're not quite sure what their futures should or could be. So I think hopefully it's bridging the gap between my young adult audience who are more than welcome to come and join us in this adult book, but also hopefully find a new readership as well who wouldn't touch a young adult book, even though they absolutely should because they're brilliant. So yeah, it's been pretty much exactly the same. In fact, maybe even easier. Not Quite Dead Yet was, I think, the easiest book I've ever written. And by that, I mean that, like, I didn't want to throw myself out the window that many times whilst writing this book. So, like, I did something right, especially when I compare it to my latest YA book, The Reappearance of Rachel Price. And that book put me through hell. I hated writing that book. So, by comparison, Not Quite Dead Yet was a bit of a breeze. So, hopefully, that doesn't mean it's terrible.
It's definitely not. And one of the thoughts I had was like, is there a yay? I get to write for adults, but you kind of talked about the swearing, so I think that
Yeah, I mean, that's really it. I'm a simple person. I'm easy to please, and it was really just the swearing. And I talk about taxes. Not that that was a reward for me. That was boring, incredibly boring. But you can't put taxes in a YA book, so
no.
no,
All right.
certainly
So
not.
speaking of premises, yours is a doozy. Jet Mason is attacked at the beginning of the book, has been given a week to live, and is determined to find her own killer. Can you talk about any inspiration you had for this story, and was there research you did to inform her condition?
Oh boy, yes. Oh, that was a lot of research. Um, I mean, the genesis of this book, I don't want to jinx things, but this seems to now be my new process because it happened for this book and the one prior, which does seem to be when I'm out walking the dog and my thoughts are just spiraling away. Um, I'll just suddenly think of a title and then be like, yeah, that's a great title. I should write a book to match that. And I'm semi-cheating because the title, for me, my titles sort of are the hook of the story. They sort of tell you what the story is about. That like the reappearance of Rachel Price, you know, there's a woman called Rachel Price who's reappearing, not quite dead yet. Obviously, there's someone who is going to be dead, but isn't quite yet. And it kind of tells you what the book is about in the title. So it's happened twice to me now where the title is the thing that's come first, or the title with the hook. And then I just have the easy, simple task of writing an entire book to suit that title. But this one, as I said, often I will have that hook moment whilst I'm in the thick of doing some other task. So I was probably editing Rachel Price when I came up with this idea. And then I sort of use that as the dangling carrot that like I will be allowed to work on that when I'm finished this boring homework. So as soon as I was allowed to start writing this book, which actually I think I was semi-waiting for season 1 of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, we had to wrap that. And then this is sort of the next task. We wrapped that. I got married, I went on honeymoon, and then I was like, okay, now I have to write this book. So I spent maybe the majority of writing this book actually researching, because I knew I wanted to do this concept of someone investigating their own murder, but I wanted it to be realistic because my sense is that this is a bit of a niche, like an untapped concept, as it were. But lots of people have circled similar ideas, but they often seem to be like, oh, you've been poisoned and you'll die in a week unless you find the antidote, or you know, they always sort of go into the realms of unrealistic sci-fi, or failing that, it's you're dead and your ghost is investigating your own murder, so sort of paranormal. But I wanted to have like a super realistic, like medically viable concept where this would have worked. So if during the research phase I had found out it wasn't really going to be possible to do this book, I was prepared to put it in the trash. I was fully prepared to be like, okay, it's not going to work. I'm only doing it if it's like actually viable. So I did a lot of research on my own, and this one was complicated enough that I needed to find a doctor, a family friend who's a doctor who knows everything about brains, is like top of his field. So I laid out to him. I was like, this is what I want to do with this character. I'm sure it's got to be something to do with the brain. This is what I'm thinking. Help me. How do I do this? And he was very, very helpful. And even though we had a couple of Zoom chats talking about it, I've slightly gone off what we said for poetic license reasons. But so as far as I'm aware, the concept is medically viable. Obviously, it's incredibly unlikely. But like, if these exact circumstances aligned, this may be possible. And that was always really important to me. But God, it meant I had to do a lot of research. So I researched for a lot, and then I did my plotting. And once I've kind of plotted and outlined the whole book, I will write the entire plot out on those like little flashcards. So like every scene or chapter is written out. I then like keep them in columns on my floor like a psychopath, and then I just write the book. And actually, this book was, as I said, quite quick, quite easy. I wrote the entire thing in 6 weeks exactly. Obviously, I spent 2 months, 2 to 3 months on the research, plotting, and planning. So that was kind of, for me, that's where the book is made, in that first initial stage. And then 6 rough weeks of trying to make it actually sound good and write it out on the page. But yeah, that was the process for this one. And as much as there was a lot of research, I can't complain about this one because I've lived through much worse.
Yeah, that's incredible how I can totally see where all the prep work made it then when you got down to writing it, that you could do it in 6 weeks is very fast, but
It is. I do
that's
not
incredible.
recommend that. That's just me. But I have this graph thing where I can track how many words I write in a day. And there are times where I don't meet my goal, and then I have to do loads the next day. And I think my record on this occasion was I wrote like 5,000 to 6,000 usable words in one day because I had to. But yeah, it's slightly unhinged. I do not recommend. That's not the sensible way of writing books.
Okay, so as she investigates her own murder, Jet comes to some personal realizations. Besides the fact that you were writing a murder mystery and thus investigating was going to come into it, tell us what you were hoping to explore in Jet's discoveries, choices, and decisions.
Yes, so for me, I always like to think of my books in sort of two levels. There's the plot, the kind of surface level, what's going on. And then there's the story, which is tied into the main character's character arc and other characters' arcs and how they sort of inform around one theme that kind of connects everyone's emotional journey. So obviously the plot this time is the very hooky, very sellable. This woman gets attacked and now she has 7 days to solve her own murder. Like that's hooky, that's plotty. But really, the story that's going on underneath, I hope, if I've been successful, is much more. I sort of pitched it to my agent as someone solving their own murder in 7 days, but then it also gets a bit, it's a wonderful lifey at some point, which if you've read the book, I think hopefully you'll understand. But it's not necessarily about solving her own murder, even though that, of course, is the driving force that pulls us through the book. It's about Jet sort of only having 7 days left and having wasted a lot of her life, and finally learning how to like live fully in this last week, even though she's not intending to learn that lesson. And that's something that she does whilst we're following the kind of surface level plot that's pulling us through. So yeah, for me, that's how I approach every single book, because as much as you can come up with the hookiest plot that you want to, and I come up with some outrageous ideas that I can then justify with research, it won't matter if readers are reading it and they don't care or connect emotionally to the character. And that's what you need character arc or story for. So I do a lot of work. Plot is kind of the first thing that comes to me, and I have all the fun scene ideas. And then I do a lot of work and spend a lot of time working out the main character, what their kind of like fatal flaw or their own like misbelief about themselves or the world is, and how they're going to learn that lesson and how the plot's going to teach them certain things about themselves. To me, that's almost the more important part of the book. And you read lots of books that just do the plot part and not the story part. But for me, I wouldn't attempt to publish a book without having done that other homework, because I think that's what makes people cry in the end. And I'm very much hoping they will shed a tear or two with this book. And if you don't, you're a monster.
I certainly did. So I
Okay,
hope
good. Jane, you're a good
not a
person then.
monster here.
No.
But I did. I was very invested in the end there, and was certainly
I got you in the feels.
Yes, you did.
Excellent.
You certainly
That
did.
is my intention.
Jet and Billy got
I
me. Totally got
know.
me. Totally got
I
me.
can't wait for everyone on the internet to be furious at me.
Yes.
Again, classic.
hmm Um, and the choices and the It's a Wonderful Life, I really did get that as well. That examination of, just what have I been doing with my life, and all the things I'm missing because I'm circling on some things that are past and I should let
Yeah.
go of. I thought that was a really strong theme through the book.
Yes. So profound. It's not just about murder, folks.
No.
There's more
Well,
meat here.
and I will always say that about any mystery I'm reading. There's always lots more there. And for somebody out there in the world saying, "Oh, it's just a mystery novel, they're all the same," that's certainly not true. They have so much depth, and yours certainly did. So,
Thank you, Jane.
yeah, much of the story of these people's lives revolves around past hurt, as I just mentioned, and trauma and the lingering effects it can have on those involved. Nobody gets out unscathed, but some choose to let the past go in order to move on with their lives. How did you envision that aspect of the story and what to do with each character?
Yeah, so not to get too scientific again, but I'm going to, ruining the process slightly. But as I said, plot is like the easy part for me. And I think of like the fun scenes and set pieces. And then I do a lot of character work on the main character. But as much as they need to have like the fullest journey, and that will always involve something that happened in the past, which made them think the way that they do, or think about themselves the way that they do. So there is a lot of examination about something that happened in the past, Jet's family, that shaped certainly the way she is, but it also shaped the way her brother is, the way her mum and dad are. And I refer to this as the ghost in a character arc, which is sort of like the traumatic event in the past, which is still haunting everybody and has turned them into the people they are today. And there's a lot of examination about what that event is and how that informs current events going on. But for me also, and sometimes this is tricky. I'm not going to say I do this every time because sometimes this is impossible. But what I think is the neatest or like the best storytelling is if everybody's character arc is a different interpretation on the same theme. So like that might be something like guilt or blame, but in Not Quite Dead Yet, I think it's more like people's interpretation of what life is supposed to be, like the meaning of life. And I think it's clearest with Jet and Billy that they have certain kind of misconceptions about what life is supposed to mean, and they will learn that they've been wrong by the end of the book. But almost with every single character, that's a stipulation I tried to put on myself was, okay, whatever is going on with them and what's been haunting them, can it be like circulating on this theme of what is the meaning of life? See, it's a wonderful lifey. And I must say some of their interpretations are not very good or not very aspirational. But so there's a lot of science and a lot of moving parts that go into it without other characters. As much as I see some authors talking about their characters as though they have a life of their own and they lead them off the page. No, that's not the way for me. I'm very clinical and scientific about it. I'm like, they will do what I need them to do. And they're all going to be informing everyone around this theme. So that's another kind of big bit of work I do before I even put pen to page. I need to know what everybody's sort of like misbelief ghost and what they're going to learn. And not every character does have a positive character development change arc. And not every character should have one. It's good to throw a negative one in there, or someone who doesn't learn, and that's kind of the tragedy of their circumstance.
Great. So you talked a bit about this already, so this will probably be a bit repetitive, but I want to hear a little bit more about writing process. So your plot has a lot of moving pieces with a lot of nice twists and red herrings. And how do you keep track of it all? Are you a seat of the pants, figure it out as you go, or an outline it all out writer? Now you talked about outlining in your post-it, so I just want to hear more about your process.
Yes, I think when I hear about authors saying they're a pantser and they just vibe along, it brings me out in hives. I don't know how they do it. That is terrifying to me. I'm like, well, great for you. You're doing it wrong. There is no wrong way of writing. Everyone can do what they want, but I am very militant and very strict in the way that I do it. Which is, if I've not made it clear already, I'm absolutely an outliner, not just the main plot, literally every single thing. So every time I'm throwing in a red herring or a clue, I've entirely like plotted out where it's going to be. Even like some dialogue that I've thought of, I'll write it down on these flashcards and know that I'm kind of building a scene around that turning point. Essentially, I am never surprised. I don't surprise myself because I have all of it kind of written out on these flashcards. Every single beat, I know what's happening. The only thing that's slightly sometimes a surprise to me is word count. I always set out with really high expectations that I'm going to write a book that's about 100,000 words. And it's happened to me before that I still haven't reached the very like structured midpoint, which should happen midway through a book's runtime, as it were. And in my previous book, Rachel Price, I think I only reached this midpoint when I got to about 75,000 words. And so I was like, oh no, something's going very wrong here. This is going to be a big book. But actually, surprisingly, with Not Quite Dead Yet, I think it might be, maybe it's not my shortest, maybe it's my second shortest book, but it's a bit tighter than what the monsters I normally churn out, which I'm sure the publishers are thrilled with. So sometimes that's a surprise that I can never really estimate how long a book is going to be. Maybe I'm getting better at it. No, I'm not, because Rachel Price, I absolutely messed that up. But other than that, in terms of like what's going onto the page, I know exactly what it is. It's just that, well, we keep it spicy. The word count is sometimes a little surprise. Sometimes a shock when I tell my agent how long the book is. This time, very pleasant for everyone to hear.
Yeah, I thought you got a lot accomplished in what was not a big giant book. So kudos to you for pulling it
I
all
did
together
it.
and
She's
having all
nailed it.
those.
After 6 books, maybe this is my sixth, she's finally worked out how to write a slim book. Don't expect it to happen again.
So I didn't, one question I always like to ask is, even though this book is still to come, it's forthcoming, what are you working on now or next? Or are you doing
Oh,
more
well,
YA or adult
I'm
or?
actually, I fully intend to keep going with both young adult and adult books forever. Again, as I said, I'm never writing in another age category. I'm sure they won't let me. But at the moment, I'm actually working on season 2 of the TV show of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So I'm writing that show, and we went into production a few weeks ago. So we're shooting at the moment. I've actually just come off a week of night shoots. So I was technically kind of on American time in a way, just, up all night and then sleeping during the day, like the vampire I am at heart. So that's hard work. It's obviously very different than writing books. An entire village has to go into making a TV show work, but it is one of those cool pinch me moments when you see a scene from the book that you've now written in the screenplay, like coming to life in front of you, and you can see it in the monitor. So that is cool. Tiring, but that's what I'm doing at the moment. And then I suppose I should start plotting and planning and writing a new book at some point. I'm sure someone will be calling me up soon and saying, "Excuse me, we'd like another book." So yes,
Most definitely.
they definitely will be.
And before I ask you for any words to the librarians who will be listening, what are you reading? Are you so busy with the work of the TV show, which I can guess that is a lot of work? Is there anything else you're
Yeah, there
reading?
there is. I am reading at the moment. I'm reading the new Hunger Games book, and I've suddenly just gone blank on what it's called. Sunrise on the Reaping
Reaping,
is
yes,
one. Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So I've been reading that essentially since it released, and I am loving it. It's just I'm so tired. I pass out after about 2 sentences. So I'm chugging my way very slowly through that, but I love being back in the world of the Hunger Games in fictional form. I would not like
Right,
to be there.
right.
We
Yeah,
might be heading there, but at least we're getting some practice via Suzanne Collins.
yeah, I think we all try to imagine how would we do in the Hunger Games, and I'd probably be one of those very first people out.
Oh, do you think? Well, I'm one of those people who's like, yeah, I'd win. Yeah, I definitely win. And then I wouldn't.
All right. Any final words you'd like to give for our librarians who will be listening to this?
Oh God, that sprung on me. Other than thank you so much for all the hard work you've done so far, supporting me and my books and foisting. Foisting, is that a word? I'm gonna go with it. I'm very tired. Foisting my books into the hands of readers, and I hope that you will love Not Quite Dead Yet. I certainly love it. Even though I only wrote it in 6 weeks, it was a lot of hard work, I swear. And yeah, I hope that readers are as excited about this slightly new venture from me, but I hope that all my existing readers feel welcome into this new venture, and hopefully we find some new readers as well. And I'm very grateful for the role that you play, as ever, in the life cycle of books. So thank you so much, and I hope this has been interesting, if at least not informative. I mean, normally it's a risk what I'm going to say when I'm put in front of a camera. So I think I stayed largely on topic this time.
You did great.
Okay,
So thank
excellent.
you so much. And thank you to all the librarian and educators for joining us today. Next, we have two concurrent panels, group reads and endless possibilities. So thank you, everybody.